be here with y'all. Thank you so much for making time to celebrate the arts and for coming and showing up and being bold and signing up for an open mic and embracing that edge of public speaking and sharing your voice in spaces like this. It's a beautiful thing to see. So today we're going to kick things off with our featured artist, who is Victoria Martinez. Victoria Martinez is a poet and author whose work centers social justice, embodiment, and the radical act of telling the truth. Drawing from her experiences as a first-generation scholar, cultural historian, and disabled woman, her poetry weaves together identity, healing, and resistance. She is the author of A Call to Awaken, and her work asks readers to slow down, reflect, and reconnect with their voice and their truth. So without further ado, let's welcome up Tori up to the stage, everybody.
I've been writing poetry since I was 8 years old, but for my debut book of poetry, this wasn't what I intended to write. And this work, or this particular work of poetry, came out of doing some deep community work throughout the state of Colorado. And I found myself in the back of a very large conference room in Denver, Colorado, with 75 other community leaders and community organizers from rural communities throughout the state of Colorado. And these people had come together to talk about our rural community work that we were doing throughout the state with some amazing people who were wanting to make their communities here healthier, stronger, and just better places to live with their families. And this group of leaders were talking about the struggles that everybody was facing, the roadblocks that we were having to overcome. And so there was deep emotion that was happening in this space. There was also a lot of anger, frustration, joy, and shared experiences. And so as I sat in the back of that huge conference room, I listened and I observed. And this is the poem that came from that moment. It's called Brave Souls. Let us venture into this vast wilderness with a desire to find the beauty of equity, strong enough to take a breath of it. To start this journey, we must be brave, for this wilderness is as dangerous as it is wondrous. What we must realize is that to be brave also means we must be vulnerable. In this vast wilderness, we must weave a web of safety and belonging, stoke a fire of passion bright enough to illuminate the truth, build bridges to overcome the great divides, connect ourselves through stories of the past and dreams of the future. These actions together are powerful enough to create ripples upon the waters of change that will be felt even in the marble halls upon the hill. There is a time for the power of silence when we stand strong as our mountains in solidarity. There is a time to plan and prepare, to educate and inform, to build up the strength we need to venture into this vast wilderness. And there is also a time to rise as leaders and take action, to rejuvenate the next generation so that they do not lose hope. The time is here. The time is now. And the wilderness is calling to all of you brave souls. So let's move from that large conference room in Denver to a very small living room in Alamosa. And I was working with 12 young adults who ranged in age from 18 to 25. And these young adults had been working diligently and so hard to get into the spaces of power and to get before the people who could actually help them make a change in their communities. They had the funding to back them up, but they kept being met with doors slammed in their face, phone calls that were not returned, emails that were not answered, and we sat in this small living room, some of us on couches, some on chairs, some sprawled out on a small carpet on the floor, and they expressed so much frustration and anger and sadness about not being listened to, about not being taken seriously. And the thing that they heard the most often was, "You're too young." And so they were at a point where they were almost ready to throw in the towel and give up. And we sat down and we had a conversation, and I asked them 2 questions. And question 1 is, if you could have the perfect leader in those spaces, what would that leader be doing? And what would that leader need to act like? And the second question I asked them, if you were the leader in those spaces, who would you be? And after we had that conversation, this is the poem that came from that moment. And this is called Give Me a Leader. Give me a leader that I understand. One who will walk with me and not just show the path. Give me someone who does what they say, for actions speak louder than words. Give me someone who's been where I've been. For how can you reach me if you can't understand? Give me someone whose words come from their heart and not just their head. Show me your hurt. Show me your pain. Show me your tears so I know where you've been. I can see where you are. And I can see what you do. But how did you get there? And can I get there too? I don't need a superwoman who is perfect as can be. I need a real person who relates to me. I need someone to give me hope in the midst of my trials right here where I'm at. Will you be the leader that I'm looking for? If you're open and willing, just knock on the door. For the door to my heart is unlocked. And you'll see, it's far easier to open than you might believe. So from that moment of them being in that little living room and feeling defeat, they decided to take action. So they got dressed up in suits and decided to show up at the town hall meeting. And because they wouldn't be put on the official agenda, which would have given them about 20 to 25 minutes to talk about the work that they were doing in the community and the work they wanted to do in the community, instead, they had to sign up to be put on public comment, which only gave them about 5 minutes of time. So we walked into the room, and they all sat on the front row in their nice suits, waiting to be called on. And when the mayor called them, I got up and went to the podium along with one of the young people. I briefly introduced myself and the team, and then I turned away from the town council, and I turned to the people that were in the room. And we, in Spanish, told them that we had information for them, that we had an interpreter in the back of the room that had headphones for them if they wanted to hear what was happening in their heart language. And then I turned the floor over to the young person that was with me, and he hit the ground running, and in 5 minutes delivered an amazing and powerful speech. And when we looked at the town council members, their mouths had dropped to the floor. Their faces had turned red with embarrassment because they had not taken these young people seriously. And it was such a moment of empowerment for these young people to really feel like they were being heard, taken seriously, and that from this moment on, the town council would not take for granted the amazing and powerful and life-changing work that they were doing in the community. But there is a bridge that had to happen to take these young people from that moment of defeat in that little living room to their moment of triumph in that town hall meeting. And that bridge that needed to happen was a moment of self-care, where they had to take a step back and take care of themselves and build themselves back up so that they could take action. And this is the poem that came from that moment of self-care. It's called Just Breathe. I close my eyes and take it in to every cell of my being. I release it, and with it, pain, sorrow, grief, and anger. I take it in again, and with it, I soak in safety, calmness, strength, and peace. I breathe and breathe again. I fall down and breathe again. I cry, then breathe again. With a broken past and a wounded heart, I keep breathing. After a lost battle and before the start of another, in the midst of the war, I just breathe. In the cold of war, I see it. In the deafening silence of inaction, I hear it. Within me, through me, all around me, powerful, life affirming breath. When all else fails, when fear is nigh, when success finally arrives, when joy abides, just breathe. Breathe because you have to. Then breathe because you want to. Breathe and know you are alive right now in this moment. That is enough. You are enough. It is enough to take in life, enough to release that which weighs us down. It is both a dream and reality, both a pleasure and a necessity, because in both prayer and screaming, breathing is a part of our journey. It is living. In dance or song, in story or poem, we breathe. Daily alone, we breathe. Collectively in trauma, we breathe. With it, we are propelled into each new moment. Thankful, grateful, breathing. So let's move now from that space in Alamosa to an even larger conference room in Denver again. Only this time, instead of 75 leaders, there's hundreds of people, all from rural Colorado, all of them working in their communities to make them healthier, stronger, and more resilient. Not just leaders, but their community members who have backed them up, stood by their side, and worked with them. And part of what we did was do breakout rooms. And in each of these breakout rooms were individuals from different communities throughout Colorado. And they each talked about the struggles their community was facing. They each talked about the pain and the sorrow and the struggles and the roadblocks. And then something beautiful happened. Again, as I was sitting in the back of the room, observing and listening, I was so honored to witness a moment of epiphany. And it could be seen on their faces and felt in their whole body. Because in that moment, as they began to look around the room, they realized they were not alone. Their community was not the only community in rural Colorado facing the struggles and challenges that they were facing. And in that moment, as they saw each other come together, they realized that where there is more people, there is also more voices. And where there are more voices, the louder those voices become. And they realized that they had the power to not just change their communities here in San Luis Valley and throughout Colorado, but to change the state as a whole. And they used that momentum to do that very thing. And I was so honored and proud to be part of that moment, to witness that epiphany. And from that epiphany came this poem. It is called Power in the Broken Masses. Broken ourselves, we move forward, limping, crying, angry, screaming, yet we keep moving. Nothing will hold us down. Pain is our reason, our motivation. Our collective trauma is our fuel for change. We gather to tend to each other's wounds. I've got your back and you've got mine. We know we are not alone. We see we have someone to hold us up, and this is the power of our broken masses. Sad that the burden falls to the broken. But if not us, who? Angry that this work is still needed. But if not now, when? Others see that our wounds are the same as theirs, and they flock to us because misery loves company, but it cannot survive there. Collectively, we are healed, and that brings the light to which darkness cannot hide. The broken masses, we heal ourselves so that no longer broken. Standing in our power, we create ripples upon the water, footprints upon the sand. The power of our collective voices shatters the silence. We are heard. The power of our experiences exposes the shadows. We are seen. The power of our demands shake up the systems that oppress us. We are the change. And this is the power of our broken masses. My poems were written because of this community work, but they belong to all of the people of Colorado who inspired all of these words. Their stories of resilience, healing, and courage, because sometimes poetry is not just words, but it's another way to make sure that our stories are heard. All of the poetry that I shared tonight came from listening to stories, from witnessing struggles, and from seeing the incredible resilience of the Colorado people in all of these rural places. But the longer I did this work, the more I realized something very important. This external community work didn't just improve the communities these people were living in. It very deeply and very meaningfully began to connect the people themselves. And as that continued to happen, the work itself began to ask deeper questions of us. Who we are, where we come from, what is our history, and how does that history live in us? How does all of that impact our health, our well-being, and the way that we see the world? And as the work began to ask those questions of me, it took me back to a space where I grew up, where I was influenced, where I was shaped by the people around me as to who I am as a woman and how I see the world. And that space was my grandmother's kitchen. And I'm sure for many of you here tonight, the kitchen can also be the heart of your home as well. So I'd like to share with you tonight one of the poems from my upcoming poetry collection, which will be released on April 1st. And this poem is about that space, about my grandmother's kitchen. It's called La Cocina. She stood at the stove, stirring ever so slow the papas y frijoles in in warm, gentle glow. The rich aroma curled through the air, a silent call for familia to gather. La cocina is where the stories were told, plans for the future, and traditions of old. Comida, our sustenance. We all need to eat to survive. A feast of many colors, from many hands it came. Each dish a different story, each aroma a piece of heritage proclaimed. New friends would bring new dishes. Old friends would bring new news. Never a moment of silence, never a moment to be still. La cocina was the playground, a battle of wills. In La Cocina, I learned to read the Bible and stand with grace, to always be unafraid, to make round tortillas while hands kept pace, to speak with courage, strong and true, and to honor my elders and give them their due. In La Cocina, we didn't just prepare our children's food, we carefully crafted their character too. In La Cocina, standing wise and true, were our mamas, tias, y abuelas too. Their voices held the power, their words fanned the flames, their wisdom dealt justice, as they called us by name. As a curious child, La Cocina was bright, a place full of magic, of warmth and light, a mystery deep, a love so strong, the heart of the home that made us belong. Thank you so much for sharing these stories and these moments and these poems with me tonight. May everyone in this room and listening to the sound of our voice, may we all continue listening to our communities, to our histories, and to our voices within that are still awakening. And if you're interested, you can get my book, Call to Awaken. It's available on my website. I'll have some available here tonight as well. Thank you all so much.